The airport was never meant to hold secrets. It was a place of motion, of departures and arrivals, of fleeting moments that dissolved as quickly as they appeared. People rushed past each other with little thought, eyes fixed on departure boards, luggage in tow, minds already miles ahead of their bodies. But on that particular afternoon, something shifted in the rhythm of the crowd, something subtle at first, then undeniable. A pause, a whisper, a glance that lingered a second too long. And then, like a spark catching dry air, the realization spread. Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan were there. But it wasn't just their presence that sent waves through the terminal. It was what, or rather who, was with them. A baby. At first, it seemed almost impossible to process. Even those who recognized them immediately found themselves questioning what they were seeing. The scene didn't fit into any known narrative, any expected storyline. It felt like a moment pulled from a script no one had read. Wang Yibo walked slightly ahead, his usual composed demeanor intact, though there was something different in the way he moved, slower, more deliberate. Beside him, Xiao Zhan carried the baby with a careful steadiness, his attention focused not on the crowd or the growing number of curious eyes, but entirely on the small bundle in his arms. The baby stirred, and in that tiny movement, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Passengers who had been moments away from boarding paused mid-step. A woman checking her phone lowered it slowly, her eyes widening. A group of travelers exchanged quick, stunned glances, as if silently confirming that they were all witnessing the same thing. No announcement could have drawn more attention. No headline could have spread faster. Phones began to rise, not aggressively, not chaotically, but almost instinctively. A need to capture the moment, to hold on to proof of something that felt unreal. Yet, despite the attention, there was no immediate disruption, no loud commotion, just a growing ripple of disbelief. What made the scene even more striking was the contrast. These were two of the most recognized faces in the industry, individuals whose every move was often scrutinized, analyzed, and discussed. And yet, in that moment, they seemed almost removed from it all. Grounded, present, real in a way that felt rare. Xiao Zhan adjusted his hold on the baby slightly, his movements gentle, almost instinctive. There was a softness in his expression that few had ever seen so clearly. Not the polished smile of a public appearance, not the controlled emotion of a performance, but something quieter, more personal. Wang Yibo glanced back briefly, his eyes meeting Xiao Zhan's for just a second. It was a look that lasted no more than a second, but it carried something unspoken, an understanding, a shared awareness of the situation they were in. And then they continued walking. Security personnel nearby seemed to register the shift in the atmosphere, their posture subtly changing as they observed the growing attention. Yet there was no immediate intervention. The moment, though extraordinary, remained calm. A child nearby pointed, whispering something to their parent. The parent followed the gesture, their expression shifting from confusion to surprise, and then to something softer, curiosity, perhaps, or even quiet admiration. Because beyond the shock, there was something undeniably human about what was unfolding. A baby, cradled carefully. Two individuals moving through a crowded space with a sense of purpose that seemed to override everything else. No grand announcement, no explanation, just presence. As they approached the check-in area, the murmurs grew louder, though still restrained. Snippets of conversation floated through the air. Questions, guesses, disbelief. Some wondered if it was part of a project, a hidden filming, a scene being captured without obvious cameras. But there were no visible crews, no lights, no directors calling out instructions, only reality. And that made it all the more compelling. The baby let out a soft sound, not quite a cry, not quite a laugh. Xiao Zhan responded immediately, his expression shifting with a natural ease that suggested familiarity. He murmured something softly, too quiet to be heard, but enough to soothe. Wang Yibo slowed his pace, waiting. It was a small gesture, almost insignificant in isolation, but in that moment it spoke volumes. The synchronization between them was effortless, unspoken, as though they were moving within a rhythm known only to them. For those watching, it was impossible not to feel drawn in, not just by the surprise of the situation, but by the authenticity of it. In a world where so much is curated, staged, and controlled, this felt different, unscripted, unfiltered, real. A young man standing near the boarding gate shook his head slightly, as if trying to clear it. He said, "Is that?" but didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The answer was already evident. Nearby, someone whispered, "How is this even possible?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, but shared by many. Speculation began to form almost instantly, weaving through the crowd like threads searching for a pattern. Some suggested it might be a relative's child. Others leaned toward the idea of a project being kept deliberately under wraps. A few simply watched in silence, choosing observation over assumption. But regardless of interpretation, one thing remained constant: the moment itself. As they reached the check-in area, an airport staff member greeted them, their professionalism holding steady despite the unmistakable flicker of surprise in their eyes. There was a brief exchange, quiet, efficient, and then documents were handed over, processed with the same routine as any other passenger. Yet nothing about this felt routine, not to the people watching, not to the moment unfolding. The baby shifted again, this time opening its eyes briefly. For a fraction of a second, those closest caught a glimpse, a tiny face, unaware of the attention it had drawn, existing entirely in its own world. And somehow, that made everything feel even more surreal. Because while the crowd processed, speculated, and reacted, the baby simply was, unconcerned, unaffected, a quiet center in the middle of a storm of curiosity. Wang Yibo leaned slightly closer, his gaze softening as he looked at the child. There was no performance in the gesture, no awareness of the eyes watching, just a simple human reaction. It was that detail, small, almost fleeting, that stayed with many long after the moment passed, because it revealed something beyond the headlines, beyond the speculation. It revealed a glimpse of something real. As the figures of Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan disappeared from view, the space they left behind felt different, charged, alive with possibility. Because whatever the explanation might eventually be, whatever truth would surface in the days to come, one thing was certain: everyone who witnessed it would remember exactly where they were when they saw it, the moment the ordinary turned extraordinary, the moment the expected gave way to the unimaginable, the moment two familiar faces walked through an airport with a mystery in their arms and left the world watching, wondering, and waiting.